Welcome to the Creepin' It Real show, your one-stop shop for weird news, spooky, otherworldly, and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow us on Twitter at creepin_it and like us on Facebook at The Creepin' It Real Show. Do you have a paranormal story you'd like to share with us? You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com.
Welcome to Creepin' It Real. Well, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, whatever time you're actually listening to this at. This is Christy, one of your hosts, and today we are going to talk about the Cropsey murders. I'm going to start with Moni over in SoCal. How you doing, girl?
Doing great. I'm actually coming to you at the time of this recording live from San Diego Comic-Con. Today is the last day, and we have a view at the beautiful Marriott Marina Marquis, and we are overlooking the marina, and it's absolutely gorgeous, perfect weather this morning, and it's been a long con. We've been here since Wednesday morning, and I'm ready to go home and see my babies, but it has been fun, and I have lots of news to share with you guys.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear it. Now, real quick, because between the three of us, I'm probably the most ignorant of Comic-Con, comics, any kind of comic, based hero movies. The San Diego one is like the one. It's like the shit, like the main one that everybody, like the stars usually go to. That's like the biggest Comic-Con from the country, right?
Well, yeah, Comic-Con is an international organization, and it's actually educational. It's nonprofit, and it is for, basically their motto is, education through popular arts. So that's basically, while the location is in San Diego, like it's like the mission says, it's an international organization. So we have our main convention here in July, and then there's a really nice convention, which I went to in May, which was WonderCon. But yeah, they are California based, but definitely, I think most of the people who work for Comic-Con actually work from home. So it's something that, and I say we only because I'm tangentially connected to the organization by way of, I do a panel now for the past 2 years on basically spreading education through the use of comic books in classrooms and in libraries. So that's something that I got to present on here again this year. They give a nice big push for us, and we're talking about possibly having the book clubs that right now are local to San Diego County and done through the libraries, but they're official Comic-Con book clubs. They're looking to actually expand on that and kind of spread that mission through the educational mission throughout. So yeah, this is awesome. The main event for the year for sure.
Okay. All right. And did not forget you, Yardley. How are you doing?
Hey, everything's going all right. Even though I didn't get an opportunity to go to San Diego Comic-Con, it has been fun being here in Atlanta and watching all of the trailers on YouTube that the people at the event had the opportunity to actually see in that grand spectacle, which is San Diego Comic-Con. I had a good time. The few that I watched the Godzilla 2, I watched the Shazam, the Aquaman trailer.
I watched that one too. I just watched it. Yeah.
So I guess, of those three, they all looked pretty cool. I thought that the Shazam one looked kind of fun, but of all of those that they had shown that I had seen the trailer for, I would probably pay to go see the Godzilla.
Oh, good.
I'm more of a fan.
I love Godzilla. I love Godzilla. I don't know anything about the comic, but just the movies. I don't like the old movies. I mean, they're cheesy as hell. I did watch them when I was a kid, but I love me some monsters. So I watched the Aquaman one because I freaking love Jason Momoa.
Yes.
And
what woman doesn't?
I mean, hello, I can really get behind this movie or on top of it, whichever. But
and I
like Amber Heard. I think she's crazy gorgeous. I mean, stunning.
Yes.
I don't know what genes she got, but she won the lottery, man. And, I like Nicole Kidman. It's kind of cool. This is really out of her wheelbase of acting that I've seen her do, so that's kind of cool. But it kind of reminded me of Thor underwater. So I don't know. I will see.
You know what it reminded me of, honestly, when
What?
they were first going down and you saw the city, it reminded me of Star Wars: The Phantom Menace when they were swimming to the Gungan homeworld.
They're
So
probably just redoing that slide. They're like, let's make it underwater friendly.
it's kind of cool. But you know what? I think what they did, and I think with a movie like this, they had to kind of commit to a bunch of CGI. Some of it looked cool, some of it looked suspect, but that's really with any movie. So, you know, well, we'll see. I definitely think that the Aquaman movie can't be worse than other entries.
Well, maybe
no, that's true.
Maybe we can do a show at whenever these movies wrap up and kind of debate on which ones we thought were our favorites as far as Comic-Con, main sci-fi movies. Because hey, that's still kind of in our radius. We can still do shit like that, I think.
Oh, they had the trailer. I'm sure you guys have seen it by now. We've talked about it. Overlord, which might be in the Cloverfield.
Oh, right. I haven't seen the trailer to that one.
Oh my gosh, that looks
Spielberg.
really good.
Good.
That's the one about the zombies. Is that what you're talking about?
So it's basically a group of soldiers that were drafted during World War II are in an airplane and it gets shot down and like only 4 of them survive and land in an enemy camp. And as they're trying to kind of figure out what's going on in the enemy camp so they can figure out how to infiltrate or get out alive, they find that the soldiers are jacking up on zombie juice serum. It looks creepy as hell.
Interesting. I like me a good zombie movie. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Well, guys, we'll go ahead and get into our weird news. And excuse me while I am so not prepared this week. I apologize. I'm kind of coming in on a wing and a prayer today. And I'm drinking champagne because I have a really nice bottle of champagne in our wine fridge, and I thought, why not? I have reason to celebrate life.
It's pronounced wine not.
So why not? Why not? Yeah. And so anyway, okay, Moni, what is, you got some weird news here, or is this trailer?
I don't really have weird news because I've been at this con since Wednesday. I actually skipped a party to watch Cropsey and do my homework like a good girl. But I do have lots of news coming out of Comic-Con, and some of it that Yardley touched upon. If I can find the spot on the document where I put it, there we go. So some of it's not creepy related per se, but
that's okay.
For instance, like Futurama, it was announced they're coming back.
That's my favorite cartoon ever. Oh my God, I love it. Yay! Oh, I love Futurama.
They're going to do DuckTales, and they cast Don Cheadle as the, oh my God, not Daffy Duck, Jesus Christ. The duck, the freaking main duck.
Scrooge?
No, the DuckTales.
DuckTales.
Donald, there we go. Jesus,
Donald.
Sorry. As we mentioned, Aquaman and Shazam. Jamie Lee Curtis was here in support of Halloween. I did not make it over to that panel, but apparently a fan got so scared during the preview that she was like cuddling with a fan. So I thought that was kind of cute. Glass is a big deal here. That's coming out of the Split universe,
Well, it's coming.
That was a good trailer too.
I'm kind of confused by that. I'm sorry, but okay. So I saw. I like M. Night Shyamalan. I know a lot of people don't like him, but I saw Split, and then I also saw, what was the other one that Glass came from?
Unbreakable.
I'm kind of confused as to what they're trying to do here. Do you have any revelations and I watched the trailer, and I was kind of like, I don't really quite know how they're going to pull that off.
They're setting it up like basically what I've heard is a new take on superhero movies without the origin story that you normally get, because my understanding is that in Glass there is, oh God, I forget the actress, but there's a character who's, Sarah Paulson, there we go, who's collecting these people with abilities together in one institution, and they're saying she's almost like a Professor X and like gathering these people, but we don't know yet. Is she gathering them because she wants them to do good and she wants to catch them before they start, running afoul of the law, or is she gathering them for bad purposes? Well, we don't know.
I saw the trailer and it was almost like, and this just could be the trailer and the way they were wanting to make it look, is that she was trying to convince them that it's not true. Like, that they think that they're special, but they're really not. It was almost like, she's like, tell me what your deal is, and then almost providing counter rebuffs as to that they're just normal people. I don't know. I couldn't, like, that's kind of how...
trying to manipulate them and or society around them so that she can gather them for her own purposes. But again, I don't know if she has good intentions yet.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I thought I was kind of confused because I'm like, so they look like they're in a mental institution. Yes. And she's like the doctor. And she was like, basically, so tell me, and you're right, maybe she's like, so tell me what your story is in a doctor way while by noted, okay, check, now I can use you, yeah. Interesting, and I freaking love Samuel Jackson, so he does no wrong. And, what's his name, the guy that was in Split?
He did such an amazing job.
What's his name?
Oh my gosh.
I know. And I think he's adorable because he was also he did that movie with Angelina Jolie where...
Yeah. Oh. Shit, let me look.
Because
he's in the X-Men too, which is just what's kind of funny about, like,
now he's playing
being similar.
And then I saw, because he was like...
McAvoy.
That's it. And I could see, like, he was either playing Patricia, who is one of his personalities in Split, or the kid, the little boy. And he was like, somebody's gonna get hurt, like, it was really cute. But yeah, that's interesting then. I'm okay. Because I was kind of like, what? That looks dumb.
Yeah.
Like,
that looks like that's what the thread's gonna be that kind of combines it all. Also, the big things around here that just kind of surprised me in terms of, like, what I think of as big things when I'm not at Comic-Con. Jack Ryan, oh my God, Amazon has spent all the money, like, promoting that. And they have this big interactive, they call them off-site experiences. You don't need a pass, a Comic-Con badge to go to them. But it's a little intense for me. I'm a wuss, whatever. Like, you're in virtual reality, so you're wearing VR goggles, but also you rappel from a helicopter and then you, like, zip line down. So it's this whole experience that you are, like, going through Jack Ryan's basically like boot camp or something like that. And
who's Jack Ryan?
It's a Tom Clancy series.
I know who he is. I mean, because to me, Harrison Ford will always be Jack Ryan. So I'm
John Krasinski, actually, of all people, which everybody's like, is that Jim from The Office? And I'm like, yeah, but also he's from that one military movie where he was, but there was a movie where he plays a Marine and he's a big old Marine dude. And I think it's believable. I think he's a hunk. So there you go.
Like 13 hours. It wasn't that movie, was it?
27? Oh,
something.
Yeah, it was that. It was actually really good the first half, and then the second half of that movie went downhill. But talk amongst yourselves. I'm looking it up. And also, what else was big out here? The Purge. There's an off-site Purge experience, and it's basically the best opportunity for free swag here at SDCC. I haven't made it yet because every time I've gotten in the line, they're like, that'll be 4 more hours before you get there. That being said, I've heard from other people who've made it that once you get there, the reason why it's so fun too is it's basically you go into this store and it has announcements about getting your all of the needs that you have for Purge night. So you're going to need weapons and candles and food. So you go in there and you get a $20 credit basically to pick out what you need for Purge night. And it's a big old store, and they actually call it Purge City, so they actually made it look like Party City. I'm excited. I'm going to try to make it to it today, but also they're making a Purge, I think it's a mini series because only 10 episodes have been ordered so far, and it's going to be on USA. It doesn't have any of the characters that are continuing throughout the film series. But it looks interesting. I've always liked the concept of the Purge, if not always the execution in some of the movies.
I like the concept.
Yeah, well, politically, it seems like the time is right for something like so, yeah.
We're heading down that route.
The John Krasinski movie, I'm on his IMDb page, and it was 13 hours. He played Jack Silva.
Okay.
I think Yardley said 13 hours, so he gets the prize.
I think he said 12, but he was damn close.
So he does get the prize. The other thing I'm going to mention before we can move on is Buffy the Vampire Slayer is being rebooted, and they're going to have it be a more diverse cast this time. So I don't have much more information about it, but I'm super excited.
I was too old for that one. I haven't watched one episode of it. I don't really know much about it.
Cute, but it's very in the 90s, and it's very pretty white kids with problems.
Yeah, who fighting vampires. It never appealed to me at all. So maybe I'll try it this go round. I don't know. I bet my daughter will probably be pretty into it.
Well, the real heroes of this series is a librarian because he's able to research what the hell is going on. So I'm down for that.
Heck yeah. All right. Thank you for giving us all the updates on the upcoming stuff heading our way over at the ComicCon. Yardley, so I always like to hear what everybody else is working on, and I know you're in like a billion podcasts, so I like for you, don't shameless plug away. I do like for us to talk about our other projects. I have nothing else going on in my life, so Yardley, please explain what else you have going on as far as podcasts.
Well, actually, like you, I was involved previously in a ton. I've kind of cut that number down because some of the podcasts that I'm involved in, some of the subject matter that we talk about is on hiatus. One of those was a Game of Thrones, and we all know, that's not going to be back until this time next year, or roughly around this time.
Really? That long?
Yeah, it's going to be next year. And the podcast that I participate in concerning Game of Thrones is called Behind the Iron Throne, with Chris Gray. I had been doing that podcast for a lot of years. There are people who are doing the podcast currently that are kind of putting material out there in the off season, seeing as a lot of the other Game of Thrones podcasts, which there are a trillion of them, a lot of people haven't necessarily been producing content. So to their credit, there are still people who are doing something. Most of the podcasts that I'm involved in is over at indieradio.org. One of my co-hosts, Kente Ferguson, he's someone who I first got started in the podcast game. It was through Indie Radio. We have done a ton of podcasts. So if you go to that website, the podcasts that I mostly appear on are the Spotlight Hollywood edition. We have a podcast on The Terror, which was, I think it was on Stars. It's called Talking Terror. You can find that podcast on the website and on iTunes. We're doing podcasts on Black Sails. That show has been off the air for about a year, but it's a show that more and more people actually, since it's been off the air, have been kind of flocking to it and discovering it. We're still putting out content with that. That was one of our bigger shows. And if you go to Indie Radio, we actually have a ton of other content. I might not necessarily be on all of those shows, but I keep my focus around the Spotlight, Talking Terror, and Talking Black Sails right now. And of course, Creeping It Real is my bread and butter to kind of set the tone for the upcoming week. But yeah, go to indieradio.org and check out all of the shows. I'm pretty sure that there's something there for everybody.
And Indie, I just see on your notes, Indie is INDY radio.org. I always spell it with an IE, so I just want to clarify to everybody that it's INDY I've been on there before. I've actually, when I was in Wine and Sass, did some shows with y'all with Kente, and he's awesome. You guys did like a relationship podcast.
Yeah, the Mars Venus show.
I thought that was awesome.
They actually still do that. I haven't been on, because essentially a lot of the content for most of the week, because they do, when we do Indie Radio, we do those shows live, but immediately after the show, all of the content that we just did is literally seconds later available to download. We like to encourage people to call in and participation. And a lot of these shows, like the Spotlight Hollywood edition, these are shows where we get actors and directors from TV and movies to come on, and we talk to them about the projects that they've been on. Or a lot of the times when we watch a show, we might bring an actor on from the show an hour after the episode is aired, and we take callers and do things like that. So it's always fun.
Awesome. Well, So with that, I'm going to skip our weird news because I think we did pretty good with talking about our own shit.
Well, real quick though,
What
that Yardley brought with the fingernails.
That's so gross.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read the man with the world's longest fingernails cut them off after 66 years. So I guarantee you, I'm going to tell you one thing. This guy hasn't been laid by man, woman, or beast in 66 years because there's no way anyone would want to have sex with that. That's all I really wanted to say about that.
I was looking at the picture while he was talking, and I'm like, that is his nails? That looks like... I don't even know. It doesn't look like a nail. It looks disgusting.
Well, look, this really won't take too long.
No,
so
let
me
for
just
it. Go
give the
for
listeners
it.
a little something really quick. Well, we have someone added to the Guinness Book of World Records, Mr. Shidhar Shilal of Pune, India, who hasn't cut his nails since 1952. He started on this journey at the age of 14, and he has grown his nails for the following 66 years. So now at age 82, he's going to be memorialized as having the longest fingernails in the world. So Ripley's, believe it or not, ended up flying Mr. Chalal from India to the United States to cut his nails so that they can memorialize them in Times Square at the Ripley's museum. So everybody's going to want to know, oh, well, what the hell made you make that decision? Because as Christy has mentioned, at least you would think, because I don't know. He might have a ton of kids. I have to look more into that. Once you make the decision to do that, there definitely, there's going to be different things that you can or can't do because you've got these nails. So one of the reasons why he decided to grow them, no, not one of the reasons, the reason why he decided to grow them was he was scolded by a school teacher because he accidentally broke her nail, and the teacher had told him that he'd never understand the importance of what he'd done because he'd never committed to anything. So apparently he took that as a challenge and never looked back. So just to give our listeners an idea of how big these nails are, it says that they're 197.8 centimeters, so about 6.5 feet long.
Ew.
Last time they measured it, the nails had a combined length of 909 centimeters or 29 feet.
That's
basically
disgusting.
The length of a London bus. So I just need to see video of how this guy conducted his day. How do you sleep?
Yes.
How do you lie? How do you get to work? How do you go get food? It just seems like it would be more of a detriment than an asset.
Fingernails are so gross too. Think about like everything that you do with your hands, and then you wash the surface of your hands, and that's under your nails, and that's on these nails. Like, I don't know how you get them clean. Like, that is so gross.
Well, at the age of 82, it did take a toll because he can't like open and close, his hands, and there are little issues, but. Maybe those are issues that he would have had anyway at 82, but if that's the reason why he had it, that's kind of on him. You know what I mean?
Well, if you look at the nails, I mean, when I look at my fingernails, they're white, like growing out, they're like brown and orange colored. I can't imagine that they are clean or,
every time he's wiped his ass, it's on those nails.
Well, thank God he's got a free hand. So one of his hands has short nails, and then his other hand is the hand that has the long nails. And so, how do you eat, like, on a plane? You're like, excuse me, can I have a seat for my nails, too? Like, you would literally need that.
I bet his kids don't fuck around. Like, he can just pimp-hand him with those nails. Like,
I don't think that he travels. I mean, do you, Moni? You think? I don't think.
Well, when they flew him...
Except wipe his ass with his nails. I don't know what else.
When the Guinness Book of World Records flew him here, he had to fly. So
well, they probably put him on a private jet, though.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like he couldn't. Yeah.
He spent his whole life doing nothing for his nails.
Well, there you go. He really showed that teacher who's probably
actually, if you look at the nail, if you look at the nails in the picture, though, they look like they're polished. They look like they're they look like they're taken care of. They just look gross.
Yeah, because Guinness probably was like, we can't photograph these like this. Everyone's gonna gag. Let's get them cleaned up for you.
They're all shiny and looking like, they look like entrails, to be honest.
They do.
They look like mini horns.
Okay, well let's move on because the more we talk about it, the more I'm staring at this picture. Oh, and look at the thumb. Look how it's like curled up like a snake.
Yeah,
That's
it's a little.
I'm gonna post this because.
But how can but how can you? But I'm just saying, like, there's no way. You can't have that and look cool with it. Like, you have to accept people saying that you're a freak for doing that. That's something you've got to own 1,000%.
True.
Oh, when you're walking anywhere, people are going to be staring at you, you know?
Yeah. That's probably what he wants.
I guess. One way to get attention.
You probably wouldn't even believe that that's what it was if you saw him from the distance. You probably think he was holding a bunch of sticks or something. That's crazy.
Real quick before we get into the main topic, I know that Yardley and I were trying to get in to see Ghost Stories a while back. I just watched it last night because it's available to purchase on demand, and I mean, it's okay.
Oh, really?
It was okay. It's from the UK. It's different. The ending's kind of cool because it really it just the endings. I'm not gonna explain anything else, but otherwise, it's not worth a purchase to me, which sucks because we were like literally trying to find the one movie theater that it might be at in Georgia, wanting to watch it because of the reviews, and I think maybe I had built up my expectations just a little bit. It was okay. So anyway, moving on. I just wanted to say that because I did when I saw it was available for purchase online or on TV, I was like, all right, well, I mean, it's better than $6 here versus like $40 I'd spend at the movie theater with tickets and popcorn and wine and everything else I would do. So fair enough. And it was okay. A little strange. Some of it didn't really, it does kind of the end does make some sense, but anyway, if it's available to watch for free, watch it. Otherwise, I wouldn't pay anything
Don't run for it.
Yeah. So anyway, okay, now to our main event. I have never heard of Cropsey, and I just happened to come upon it when I was looking at documentaries on Netflix, looking for something because I really like true crime, but I like it in a more like horror. I mean, every true crime is horrifying, but in a weird, bizarre way. And this really was fascinating to me when I decided to do it because I had never heard of it. It's in Staten Island, New York in the 80s, and a very kind of Nightmare on Elm Street reality, turned to reality, really. So imagine as a kid, your parents telling you not to go to certain areas around your town, and be sure you come home before dark or the Cropsey will get you. Cropsey used to work at the old mental institution and now lives under the school, which is it's a school/mental institution, and comes out and takes kids who don't listen to their parents. Cropsey is the creature that lurks at the end of your block. It's the shadowy figure that prowls the edge of the playground. Cropsey is Staten Island's personal boogeyman. And then one day, these tales about Cropsey actually came true. Cropsey is an urban legend that sprung to life in the form of Andre Rand. Andre Rand, born Frank Russian, worked as a janitor at the Willowbrook State School, which is a mental institution for mentally disabled children not far from the ruins of Seaview. During its 40 years of operation, Willowbrook repeatedly came under fire for the mistreatment of its students. A young Geraldo Rivera revealed the institution's horrid conditions to the public in 1972 expose. By 1987, the school was shuttered for good.
Andre Rand left Willowbrook long before it closed. Many who believe in his guilt also believe his tenure at a facility notorious for abuse later influenced his crimes against children. The first youth to go missing in the string of disappearances was 5-year-old Alice Pereira, who vanished in 1972 playing with her brother. The second was 7-year-old Holly Ann Hughes, who, according to witnesses, was spotted with Rand on the day of her disappearance in 1981. The third was 11-year-old Tyheese Jackson, who disappeared shortly after Rand was arrested from prison in 1983. The fourth was Hank Caforio, a 22-year-old with a low IQ who was last seen with Rand at dinner in 1984. The bodies of the victims were never recovered. The final child was Jennifer Schweiger in the summer of 1987, a 12-year-old with Down syndrome. Jennifer told her parents she was going for a walk but never returned.
While searching for Jennifer near the shuttered school, a firefighter uncovered a small foot in the earth, which ultimately gave way to Jennifer's body buried in a shallow grave. Rand's camp was discovered shortly thereafter. Authorities quickly arrested the man and charged him with murder. In the court of public opinion, the case was open and shut. Rand was an ex-con with a record of crimes against children. In 1969, he was arrested in South Bronx after attempting to rape a young girl. In 1983, while working for a Staten Island school bus company, he kidnapped 11 children, bought them lunch, and drove them to New Jersey's Newark Airport for no apparent reason.
Nobody apparently vets any damn one. But anyway.
No, don't shit. A school bus driver. I mean, wow. Okay.
Yet there was very little concrete evidence that linked Rand to the actual murder of Jennifer Schweiger. In 1988, he was ultimately convicted of kidnapping in the first degree and sentenced to 25 years in prison. The jury was unable to reach a verdict on the murder charge, and so it fell. In 2004, just 4 years shy of becoming eligible for parole, Rand was put on trial once more, this time for the 23-year-old case of Holly Ann Hughes. Prosecutors presented new evidence in the proceedings, and a jury convicted Rand of kidnapping the little girl. He was sentenced to another 25 years. The cases of Tyheese Jackson, Alice Pereira, and Hank Gaforio all remained unsolved. In each, Rand is a prime suspect, but with the body still missing, they remain lost. The lost youths who fell victim of the Cropsey legend.
So, okay, for me, when I go back, I mean, a lot of that is about Rand, but the thing that really stands out to me is the fact that this started as a myth, as a Freddy Krueger, he's coming for you if you don't get home, the Cropsey's gonna get you, but years later actually ended up like manifesting itself, which I find really fascinating. This case is original in that what started as a myth for decades became true. You hear about real-life boogeymen, but they begin with the real crimes, whereas Cropsey started as just a story around an old, scary building. This mental institution, scary-looking. It's empty. It had been... The rumors around the island were that people were mistreated and abused there. And it's almost like that creepy house on your block that you're afraid to walk by actually produced a killer. Like, think about that, where we're all, there's that one house in town or that one house on our block that everybody has rumors about. And, as you get older, it's that you realize that was just ridiculous. But this actually happened and came true. These kids really did start to disappear. There's been also a connection of It, the movie, surrounding this. Not necessarily the exact way, but they kind of, blend it with Freddy Krueger meets It, which, hey, would be a freaking killer movie, by the way. Can you mention that? Anyway, I started to do some research, and I couldn't really find an instance where there was a myth or a legend like Cropsey that ended up actually coming to life at some point. So after that, I decided to look up the origins of the Boogeyman here in America. Actually, Boogeyman and its type of ilk word is very, Europe has its own boogeyman, which I didn't decide to get into. I was more curious about, in America, what was the first time we heard of the actual word boogeyman, which would kind of be like the Cropsey, which is what, formed Cropsey. And thing I could find was in the 1800s, the term boogeyman was first linked to an actual person named Albert Fish, who this guy's picture is just, ugh. He was born in 1870 in Washington, D.C., and grew up to be one of the most horrific killers to date, which, has anybody ever heard of Albert Fish? I had not. Either one of you?
I haven't either.
I think
I'm looking it up now.
Yeah.
I think I have heard that of him before. Yeah.
I had never heard of him, and so this guy is the first time the boogeyman has ever been talked about in the United States as far as what we have on record. I mean, that's, hard to tell for sure. But at the age of 20, Fish gained a reputation for kidnapping young boys and doing terrible things to them, which I won't list here because it's basically rape, which you could go with, including eating them. He also somehow, in between all of these activities, got married and had 6 kids, which, that's a busy man,
Wow.
Yeah, so none of his behavior was obvious to his family until his wife left him, and then the kids began seeing his crazy mental state, where he said he was God and he would eat raw meat in front of them.
Yeah.
Right.
When finally caught, the police asked about his evil habits, which he replied with, "I never ate any roast turkey that tasted half as good as these kids." At first, he admitted to killing 5, but later on in years after the trial, he said he had killed possibly 100, which I don't think it's 100. I think, once serial killers are caught and they know they're done for, they like to kind of over-exaggerate their activity to make them be just for attention, because I think really they're in jail and what else they got. I think it's higher than 5, but I don't think it's 100. On January 16th, 1936, Fish was executed for his crimes, which, this is fucking crazy. He was actually excited about being electrocuted because he felt like it was like being cooked alive, aka being eaten like a turkey. Nice. Which, so fucking crazy. Which put to an end the physical manifestation of the boogeyman. But now the myth and the legend remains today. So this is literally the first boogeyman, as far as what the United States is concerned with. And somewhere along the way, when these kids went missing, somebody would say, the boogeyman's going to get you. And I did read a little bit more into the story, and I didn't include it because, we're not really talking about the boogeyman, more we're talking about Cropsey. But it was interesting because there were a lot of kids that went missing, and they did create a saying around it before he was caught that the boogeyman would get you. And that is exactly what ended up happening here. It was a real boogeyman. Something really did happen. So I think based around Cropsey, we find that, again, but this one's different because Cropsey was created before the actual murderer started taking children. So we had this legend on the island where, parents were like, hey, you better get home before dark or the Cropsey will get you. And these parents high-fiving each other thinking they've got some way to fuck with these kids. And then growing up, this actually starts to happen to a certain generation. And I find that just absolutely fascinating. Do you guys have any thoughts about the whole
Well, one thing that I have to say to just kind of talk about Mr. Fish, I think something that even makes it even more tragic and more aggravating to me is just the fact that you have kids and you're out there murdering kids.
And eating them.
Yeah, so I don't know, that just seems really beyond the pale. I don't see how you could be with another child and kind of not see your own. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So you really have to be I don't know. You really have to be out of sorts to be able to do that. But I just had to say.
Well, congratulations, you're not a serial killer, because serial killers they have the need to kill, and sometimes they have a need to eat their victims, which AKA Jeffrey Dahmer or whatever. But they're able to compartmentalize their behaviors, so it's almost like a double life. These kids in his mind somehow deserve to die, and I haven't read enough into it to know exactly what his MO was, but most of the time when you see serial killers, it is based on that they do lead normal lives. I mean, look at the BTK, all these other killers. That guy would actually go in his treasure trunk and his kid's treehouse and look at tokens that he had taken from his victims, not completely connecting the dots between the fact that he's in his kid's treehouse looking at his tokens. So I think it's just some bizarre like compartmentalization that serial killers have, that for some reason, these kids or these people should die, and it does not in any way affect or focus on his family or his personal life, which I find really bizarre.
It's an ego. I mean, it's compartmentalizing, but it's also that ego of like, these kids deserved it for whatever reason, whether like with the Cropsey killer guy, it was like possibly his motive was that the parents, these kids were mostly special needs. And so it was like the parents weren't doing enough for them, or maybe in his mind, these kids were weaker and less worthy. That's not what I'm saying. That's what it seems like he felt like. And it feels like the same thing with people who kill other kids. It's just like, and have them, these kids are beneath me and my children in some way, and therefore, or their parents are, or their circumstances, and therefore they deserve this, or not deserve it, but therefore it's okay that I can do this, as opposed to anyone doing it to my kids.
Now, Moni, we watched the documentary. Sorry, Yardley, but here's where you get kind of cut off. Yardley didn't watch it. That's okay. He misunderstood, miscommunication. But I really, because the documentary starts with you hate him, and then you have questions, and then you hate him again, and then you're left with kind of not quite knowing what really happened there. And that's kind of where the weakness of this documentary, Cropsey, left me, is that it was very good at providing a spotlight on this story, and I would not have known about it if it wasn't for the documentary. But I felt like there was really not a lot of questions behind the case answered in any way, and they just didn't have them, and that's okay. But I just felt like, okay, in my mind, it makes sense if it was Rand, because he did work for the institution that was closed. He was mentally ill himself, and the murders did seem to stop when he was caught. And a lot of them were either, when you see throughout the documentary, they were slow, they had low IQs, one had Down syndrome, where it almost felt like he probably was a sociopath and pulled in these kids because he knew it would be easy, maybe. I mean, what were your thoughts? I don't know.
Well, they mentioned that witness. I think it was a preacher or something like that who took him in for a little while, but saying that the Cropsey guy, I forget his name right now, but
Rand,
Rand, there we go, that had said that he did feel like that these kids were weak and maybe less deserving of a life than kids who didn't have issues. But also that the parents, he said, like, they don't care about them enough, and they don't have the resources or can't do enough for them. And, he would know this institution that, had worked for was known for being, was a place that Geraldo, back when Geraldo was still relevant, did an expose on about the inhumane, unbelievable, like, American Horror Story, insane asylum conditions that these people were just rounded up and sitting in their own feces and not being fed properly and not being cared for. And so, it's kind of like the best, any kind of supervillain from cartoons to real life action films, that they have some seed of motivation that you can kind of see their point where, he's seen children and people in the same situation, mentally disabled, who don't have access to resources and have terrible lives. And so, because he worked there. And so it's like in his mind, that's what all these kids are, because he's not all there. He's not right in the head himself. And so he's like, I can help them by taking them away. I can help them by taking them off this earth. God knows what he does to them in between and how he justifies that. But in the end, he's like, I removed them from a bad situation. I took them away from parents who didn't care about them and blah, blah. But yeah, well, it's pretty intense. And, this bothered me as far as whether he did it or not. When I think I've mentioned this in the podcast before, my old job, Orange Public Library in Orange County, California, was on either 20/20 or 60 Minutes for a murder case. And I won't get long into it, but long story short, the only real evidence was fairly circumstantial that the man had killed this Marine woman that he was living with as a roommate. And the only evidence they really ever found that got him convicted, but still bothers me a little bit, because he's never admitted it, just like Rand never has admitted whether he did this or not, in any sort of straightforward manner, was that he was at the public library and he zoomed in on a Google Doc the location, a very out of the way location where her body ended up being found. Mm-hmm. But, it bothers me because it's like, I'm pretty sure he did it. There's a lot of other circumstantial evidence towards it, but that was the main smoking gun. And to this day, he maintains his innocence. And I feel like there is reasonable doubt that he wasn't the one who killed her. They never figured out exactly how she died or where she died. Yeah. And I feel kind of that way about Rand, is like, definitely he's a guy who's done other bad things. Definitely he's a guy who's capable of doing bad things. I think that all of the other Boogeyman stuff built up on Staten Island around it, like with the satanic cults and all this other stuff. Not that the satanic cult doesn't exist, but I don't think it had anything to do with
No, I don't either.
Did.
I don't either.
So the thing that I know about, like, homeless, displaced people, though, like Rand, where he was living with a group, an encampment, is that, I see that working in public libraries, all public libraries nowadays across the country, there's a lot more homeless people. They live in encampments. It's a way, we're pack animals. It's a way to survive on the street in bad conditions. And just because he's the most likely to have done this and shown these kind of behaviors and attitudes in the past doesn't mean that 100% that he was the one in this encampment who actually did the deed, even if he led them away, if he's guilty of kidnapping. As far as the actual murders, and especially with the kids who disappeared and have never been found, it could have been him. It could have been him and the rest of the group. He could have just brought them to somebody in the group. We will never know because he won't give a straight answer. And obviously whomever did it, if anybody else did it, isn't going to come forward or is already gone or dead by now. So that's the part that just kind of, on the one hand, he deserves to be where he is because he definitely kidnapped kids. He's definitely hurt kids. But did he actually commit these murders? I don't think we'll ever know.
Is he drooling in that picture?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Okay.
He's a beauty.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, whenever we think about the fact that in his mind, he thought he was doing these kids like a favor, because their situation, I mean, he was living in a tent in the forest because he was homeless. So they had it better than he did.
Yeah.
And he was clearly mentally ill. So it's just kind of bizarre that somebody who was kind of equal to them, kind of in the same space, would look at them and think, or maybe he just thought, you shouldn't end up like me, later, because that really did bug me about the documentary. Was this guy, they show where his encampment was, where he was there's a big forest space, which is where the mental institution was, which is awfully crazily similar to the legend where the mental institution closed and the killer, before he, surfaced, lived in I think it was the basement of the property and of the mental institution, whereas this guy was just living in the forest right outside of it, which really freaking close to what the legend all those decades was for kids with the Cropsey is going to get you. He used to live in the mental institution and now he lives in the basement and he's going to get you. Whereas this guy was in a tent not far from the actual institution, which I find really fascinating. But I don't know if it's really hard. And that's what frustrated me about the documentary is there was, and maybe they just wanted us to kind of form our own opinion because they really didn't end it with a definitive what they thought. It was just, here's the information here. And they actually did set up a communication with him, which never made any sense. And while he was in prison, and you just were left at the end, like, you have now the information, but you just don't know what really happened. And that was really frustrating for me because usually when I watch a documentary like Making a Murderer or The Staircase or Evil Genius, like at the end of it I'm like, I have an opinion. And they made it a little bit more not so black and white, where there's a lot of gray area, and I don't know. And, you know, these guys who made the documentary, this is what makes it fascinating to me, is that they lived through this. They were the ones that when they were real little, their parents were like, better come home or the Cropsey will get you. And then actually kids started to disappear. And when it was within their lifespan. And so it has always stayed with them. And I feel like they have it's a pretty healthy outlook, because I think growing up with that, you want to peg somebody to make yourself feel better. And they just didn't do it because maybe they felt like they didn't have enough information to actually say, was it ran or not? But it was interesting in that case, where usually I walk away with like a definitive, like, yep. I did not walk away. I was very conflicted when I ended the documentary. So I don't know. I mean, how did you feel? I mean, do you feel like he did it or no?
I feel like I mentioned that he deserves to be in prison for the rest of his life for the kidnapping, if nothing else, of the luring away of the most at-risk humans he can find on the planet from their homes and from their families. I believe he deserves to be where he is for the way that he plays the media and plays the families. Oh yeah, I'm going to tell you where the bodies are. I'm just kidding. I'm not. Yeah. I believe that he definitely 100% had something to do with it, even if it was quote unquote just bringing these kids to someone else who did it. But I don't know, when you see the interviews with the police, if they really did their due diligence. And I know this is a big accusation to make against law enforcement, but he also looks really good for the murders, is an easy scapegoat. And I'm not sure that we'll never know either. They weren't going to give the ins and outs of the investigation, but looked into any individuals he may have hung out with in a homeless encampment that were just as capable of doing the actual murdering as anything else. And do they say, for the bodies that they did find, like Jennifer,
they only found one,
how she died?
I don't remember. I can't remember. I know that they found her because a hand and a foot was sticking up above the ground. And the lady, this was devastating to me, and it really has fucked with her, you can tell, who was part of the group that found Jennifer. Yeah. So it was a fireman and her and a couple of other people actually came upon the grave, the shallow grave that Jennifer was in. And she is still to this day out there looking for more bodies. For
the other kids. Yeah, they can't find the other kids.
They can't find anybody else. And she takes a cadaver dog out there and she has a handicapped son and a daughter at home. And she dedicates a part of her week constantly going through this park looking for these other kids, which is just because she feels like after that happened and she came across this child, like, what does that do to you? Oh my God. Like, I really felt for her. I felt like she was a little nutty. Like, she came across a little, like, I don't know, But I can imagine that would be devastating, and that would make you in that mind frame that she's like, every night I'm sleeping, there's there's kids out there that need to be found. And just, wow. I mean, I was just heartbroken for her and what that must be like to have been a part of this group, because they did like the searches where they did search parties, and her search party is the one that found little Jennifer. And I don't remember exactly what the how she died.
I'm just curious, did these kids die because they were not being properly taken care of by someone who kidnapped them and truly thought they were doing the best in their own totally sick and twisted way? But then they just died because they were out, outdoors in the elements, maybe not getting fed properly, or were horrible things. I don't really want to know, but that's, to me, a distinction in my mind about who may or may not have done this to these kids. And I think beyond even killing kids, which is obviously more than bad enough as anything could ever be, but the whole, if you know where the bodies are and you're not saying and you're messing with them and you're going to die in prison, never telling and maintaining your innocence, you're there. I hope there's a special level in hell for that, because bad enough that, Jennifer's body was found, her family has to deal with what happened to her, but the families whose kids have never been found. And that's where, though, too, in my mind, there's a shadow of a doubt, too, is like, I don't think that Rand had the means to take the bodies beyond the woods. Like, he wasn't going to put them in a car and drive somewhere else to bury them. So if they are not in those woods, which, I mean, they still could be, but people are looking all the time, if they were moved elsewhere, then someone else, I think, was involved with this.
Right. Well, I mean, and the way the whole story of Staten Island starts is that Staten Island was a dumping ground, literally in every possible way, with leprosy, like there was a leper colony, with the mental institution, where if your child was born with special needs that were too out of your wheelbase, you took them there. Yeah. The mob would dump bodies there. Yep. Trash was dumped there. It was the dumping grounds for New York trash. And then they make this, and I find this fascinating, where they decide to actually colonize Staten Island and make it a place for families, and it was raised from a dumping ground. So it's like, who knows what happened with these kids, because there's so many places to get rid of a body there. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just the way it's set up. It was set up that way. So interesting. I thought it was really a fascinating story, because I can't imagine, like, as a person, somebody having this myth and legend that, the Cropsey's gonna get you, and there was actually a Cropsey. Like, that really did happen at some point. And very original, very different type of true crime, since it was, the beginning of it was a legend and a myth, and then it actually became a reality. So anyway, anybody have any questions before we, turn this one out?
Turn out for what?
Turn out for what?
Too much party weekend. My brain is fried.
Yes, I totally get it. I'm jealous. I'm glad you had a good time. And Yardley, are you still awake over there? You're like, yeah, Sunday. I'm out here. Anyway,
no, everything's good.
I would recommend, if you're interested in true crime, to check out the Cropsey documentary. It actually got 90% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Lots of good reviews about it. I thought it was good. It's informative. It doesn't really give you a definitive answer in what happened, and that's okay. I think during the making of it, they were hoping for an answer, but they just didn't get it. And so they were smart and didn't turn it into something that maybe has false information, or a documentary gives you the information. It's not supposed to be made as a yes or no based on their own thoughts and opinions. So they did it right. Some of them, you watch and you realize when you look back on more information is, this person was tied to the murder on one side or the other. And you feel like the staircase, that's kind of a skewed version of what happened, Mm-hmm. So I was frustrated with it, but I was also respectful that, well, they didn't get what they wanted, and that's okay. They didn't try to taint it one way or the other.
Bias in, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And these kids were in it, like at that time. So it was an interesting documentary. Anyway, okay, so for next week, Moni takes the helm. What do we got going on next week?
We're going to talk about exorcism in its more modern form, what it really means from a psychological perspective nowadays, how it is practiced in medicine. We will be discussing the case of Anneliese Michel, who is the German young lady who passed away and had famously had a murder trial based off of her exorcism that killed her. And that was the inspiration for the film, The Last Exorcism of Emily Rose. Mm-hmm. It'd be nice if we could watch the movie. It is not available for free, though, on Amazon or Netflix or anything. So I understand if we can't watch it, but I'm going to do a little bit of research on modern exorcism. And I totally am cribbing this idea from the Astonishing Legends podcast.
I was just getting ready to tell you. They have a really good
part. It was amazing and in-depth. And I'd like us to cover it not nearly as well as they do because they're awesome. But we will be funny when we cover it because we are us and engaging. So we will cover it in our fashion. But I'm just really fascinated by what I took from it and what exorcism means now, both in the church and in the medical community, in large part based off of this case. So be ready to discuss. I will post some stuff for all of us to read aloud, and hopefully we'll get a chance to watch that film as well.
Awesome. By the way, I think Forrest Burgess should read and talk about everything in every way. Like his voice on Astonishing Legends. I love it. He's oh man, he could tell me a story and I'd be like, yep, I totally agree with you, Forrest. Okay. Just everything he says, his voice is amazing. He's like, what's his name? Damn it. Now my brain has,
Yardley?
the voice of all time. What is his name? He played God on...
Morgan Freeman.
Oh, Morgan Freeman. Damn. His voice and Forrest Burgess's voice is supreme. Love it. But, and he is a co-host with Scott Philbrook on Astonishing Legends, which they're actually doing a series right now on and off about Amelia Earhart.
Yes.
And I really do feel after watching listening to a couple of their shows that we're going to be discovering really quick what happened. There's 3 main theories and they're all right there, right on the cusp of being proven that they happened or not. And I'm really interested in one, and I can't think of where when she took off in Australia, there was this small island where reports on the island saw somebody crash and saw the plane sink, and they have a plane there that they need to go look at, and they're just waiting for literally waiting for the funding. This guy has been dedicating his whole life to this one instance at this island and is now waiting. He sent some of the island divers down to look at it, and it's the way the island divers, not knowing, they don't have internet, they don't know any clue, but the way they described it, and they actually took pictures because there's actually luggage inside the plane that sunk, and it matches with her luggage that she used, that was her husband's or her boyfriend's or something. But anyway, I'm totally obsessed with the story, so I hope that they find some results soon.
Same. Yeah, me too. And the amount of preparation that goes into the Astonishing Legends podcast, I love us, we do our thing, but I can't even imagine. Props to them, they deserve the success that they have. And we're going to steal some of their ideas, but take it in our own direction.
Well, it's all just out there, and they, pick and choose themes. But, yeah, they do this full time, and we don't. We got lives to do, which is okay. So we're just going to half-ass shit and keep you entertained, and they will really dive in and get the deep shit. So, anyway, Yardley, thank you guys for joining us. Yardley, you want to sound off with your following and anything else you need to add?
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at militant_marker. And once again, if you go to indieradio.org, indie with a Y, you can check out the abundant amount of podcasts that we have on that network.
Awesome.
Nice.
Moni?
I am Rebel Moni and on Twitter, and I've actually been tweeting. I say that, but I've actually been doing it because we gave out my Twitter handle during my panel here at Comic-Con, and I was like, I probably should put content that would be of interest to people both in the podcast and that were listening to the panel. So yay, I've been tweeting. You'll see my experience with a garden of Shiba Inu dogs, which was like all the amazing things here at Comic-Con was probably one of my favorite things this whole week.
Well, you have one. Yeah.
Yes, I do. And there was just some that were magically in a little grassy area that had leashes but weren't tethered and were just wandering in the grass. And so I was like, I don't see their parent to ask if I can pet these dogs. I'm just going to walk over and see what happens. And they all like came up to me and just, I was surrounded by Shiba Inu fuzziness and it was amazing. So anyway, thank you to you guys. Thank you to the creepers that listen. Thank you to San Diego. This has been a great week and this has been a good episode. I hope you all enjoyed this as much as we enjoyed recording it, and take care.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So you can follow me on Twitter at creepin_it, or just search the Creepin' It Real Show. That's really the only platform right now I'm active on. Sorry. It is what it is. I have a lot going on in life, and so I had to kind of, for sanity, choose just one, and I decided to go with Twitter. Otherwise, thank you guys for joining us. Hope y'all are living your best lives like we are, because I think we all got some awesome shit going on, and this podcast being one of them, which totally blowing my mind right now on our growth right now is crazy. I don't even know how to put it into words. Thank you guys for listening. It's been awesome. Just the numbers for me as a person that does social media for a living. This podcast on Podbean and iTunes is just taken off. And thank you all very much, and I hope y'all continue to support us. And with that, I bid you all a adieu, and creep it real.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, if you see the water coming down the road, you better kill him. See the water coming down the road.